Before Earl Nightingale became the voice that would echo through millions of minds, before his words reshaped the way people thought about success, life, and purpose, he was simply a young man searching for answers in a confused world. This is the part of his story that is rarely told. Not the famous recordings, not the best-selling messages, but the quiet moments, the failures, the doubts, and the inner awakening that transformed an ordinary man into one of the most influential thinkers of the modern age. Earl Nightingale was born in 1921, during a time when the world itself was uncertain. The Great Depression left families struggling, dreams shrinking, and hope becoming a luxury few could afford. Like many young men of his generation, Earl grew up watching adults work hard yet remain trapped in financial stress. This planted a silent question in his mind, a question that would later define his life. Why do some people succeed, while others, equally hardworking, never seem to move forward? His life took a sharp turn during World War II, when he joined the United States Marine Corps. As a young Marine, Earl was surrounded by chaos, fear, and the constant presence of death. But it was in these extreme conditions that his thinking began to deepen. While others focused only on survival, Earl started observing human behavior. He noticed how mindset affected courage, decision-making, and even leadership under pressure. Some men collapsed mentally before the battle even began, while others remained calm, focused, and resilient despite the same circumstances. One day, during a long and exhausting journey across the Pacific, Earl found himself on the deck of a ship with little to do but think. There were no distractions, no noise of modern life, no escape from his own thoughts. And in that silence, something powerful happened. He began to reflect deeply on life, success, and the direction most people blindly follow. He realized that the majority of people live their entire lives reacting instead of thinking, following instead of choosing. This moment became the foundation of what would later be called the secret of success. Earl understood something most people never stop to consider. If a person does not deliberately decide what to think about, their mind will automatically be filled with fear, doubt, and the opinions of others. And a mind controlled by fear can never create success. After the war, Earl Nightingale did not immediately become successful. In fact, like most people, he struggled. He worked in radio, starting from small roles, learning how to communicate, how to hold attention, and how to speak with clarity and authority. But more importantly, he continued studying the human mind. He read philosophy, psychology, and the works of great thinkers like Napoleon Hill. He wasn't just reading for information, he was searching for truth. What he discovered shocked him. He realized that success was not about luck, education, or even talent. It was about one thing and one thing only: the way a person thinks on a consistent basis. Earl noticed a disturbing pattern in society. Most people spend their lives working for goals they never clearly define. They wake up, go to work, come home, repeat the cycle, and call it life. Years pass, and one day they wonder where the time went. This realization deeply troubled him. Earl believed that human potential was being wasted on a massive scale. He believed that people were not failing because they were weak, but because they were never taught how to think. Schools taught subjects, jobs taught skills, but no one taught the most important lesson of all: how to control the direction of your own mind. This belief eventually led to the creation of his most famous recording, but before that, Earl spent years refining his message. He understood that people do not need loud motivation. They need quiet truth. They need words that slip past resistance and speak directly to the subconscious mind. His voice became calm, steady, and confident, not because he was trying to impress, but because he knew exactly what he was saying was true. The secret of success, as Earl Nightingale defined it, was simple but uncomfortable for most people to accept. We become what we think about, not what we wish, not what we talk about, but what we consistently hold in our minds. This idea challenged everything society believed. It placed responsibility back into the hands of the individual, and responsibility is something many people avoid. Earl knew that if a person truly understood this principle, their life would never be the same. Fear would lose its grip, excuses would disappear, and action would become natural. This was not motivation. This was a law, just like gravity. Ignore it, and you fall. Use it, and you rise. And this was only the beginning of Earl Nightingale's untold journey. What happened next changed personal development forever and turned a quiet radio announcer into the voice that would guide generations toward purpose, clarity, and true success. What happened next in Earl Nightingale's life was not sudden fame or instant recognition. In fact, it was quite the opposite. His ideas were too simple, too direct, and too demanding of personal responsibility for most people to accept easily. Society preferred comfort over truth, and Earl was offering truth without apology. Yet he remained patient, because he understood something most people do not. Real change does not begin with noise. It begins quietly, inside the mind. As Earl continued working in radio, he noticed how easily people could be influenced by tone, repetition, and emotion. Advertising messages could convince people to buy things they did not need, to desire lifestyles they could not afford, and to chase approval instead of purpose. This observation disturbed him deeply. If the human mind was so powerful, why was it being used mostly for manipulation rather than liberation? This question led Earl to a critical realization. If negative ideas, repeated often enough, could shape behavior, then positive, deliberate thoughts could do the same. But the difference was intention. One enslaved the mind, the other freed it. And freedom, Earl believed, was the true foundation of success. In the early 1950s, Earl Nightingale partnered with Lloyd Conant, and together, they began recording spoken messages unlike anything the world had heard before. These were not speeches. They were not lectures. They were quiet conversations with the listener's inner self. Earl spoke slowly, deliberately, allowing each sentence to sink deep into the subconscious. He knew that transformation happens not when a message is heard, but when it is repeated, reflected upon, and lived. Then came the recording that would change everything. The strangest secret. At first, there was nothing dramatic about its release. No massive marketing campaign. No celebrity endorsements. Just a simple recording shared among individuals who were searching for more from life. But something extraordinary happened. People listened, and instead of feeling temporarily inspired, they felt awakened. The message was unsettling in its simplicity. Most people, Earl explained, never decide what they want from life. And because they never decide, they drift. They accept circumstances instead of creating them. They allow fear to dictate their choices, and then they wonder why success feels out of reach. Earl called this drifting the greatest tragedy of human existence, not because it involved failure, but because it involved unrealized potential. For the first time, many listeners realized that they were not victims of circumstance. They were participants in their own results. This realization was uncomfortable, even painful, but it was also empowering. Because if results come from thinking, then changing one's thinking could change everything. The recording spread rapidly. Companies began using it to train employees. Individuals listened to it repeatedly, some every day, allowing the ideas to reshape their habits and decisions. Eventually, The Strangest Secret became the first spoken word recording to achieve gold record status. But Earl Nightingale was never impressed by the achievement itself. What mattered to him were the letters he received from people whose lives had changed. People wrote about escaping debt, finding purpose, starting businesses, and rebuilding self-belief. But Earl knew that the recording itself was not the cause of success. It was merely a mirror. It showed people a truth they had avoided their entire lives. That success is not something you chase. It is something you grow into by becoming the person capable of achieving it. As Earl's influence grew, so did resistance. Critics argued that his ideas were too idealistic, too focused on individual responsibility, but Earl remained calm. He never argued. He never defended himself. He simply continued sharing the truth as he understood it. He believed that truth does not need defense. It needs time. One of Earl Nightingale's most powerful insights was his understanding of fear. He believed fear was not an enemy, but a signal. Fear appeared whenever a person stood at the edge of growth. Most people retreat at that moment, choosing familiarity over progress. Earl taught that success begins when a person learns to move forward despite fear, not by eliminating it, but by understanding it. He also emphasized the importance of goals. Not vague wishes, but clear, written goals. Earl believed that a goal gives the mind direction, just as a destination gives meaning to a journey. Without a goal, effort becomes exhausting and confusing. With a goal, even hardship becomes purposeful. Yet perhaps Earl Nightingale's greatest contribution was not what he taught, but how he taught it. He never shouted. He never exaggerated. His calm voice carried authority because it was grounded in understanding, not ego. He spoke to the listener as an equal, not as a superior. This made his message timeless. Earl understood that success is not an event. It is a process, a daily discipline of choosing thoughts carefully, acting deliberately, and refusing to drift. He believed that every human being is born with unlimited potential, but only a small percentage ever access it, simply because they never learn how. And this brings us closer to the true secret behind Earl Nightingale's legacy. It was never about motivation. It was about awakening. Awakening people to the fact that their life is shaped from the inside out, that the quality of their thinking determines the quality of their results, and that once a person understands this, there is no going back. But Earl Nightingale's story does not end here. In fact, the most profound lessons come from his later years, where wisdom replaced ambition and clarity replaced urgency. This is where the deepest truth of success was finally revealed at. As Earl Nightingale grew older, something subtle but powerful happened to his message. It became quieter, deeper, and more refined. He was no longer concerned with convincing people. He was concerned with understanding them. He had spent decades observing human behavior, listening to countless stories of success and failure, and one pattern stood out more clearly than ever. People do not fail because they lack opportunity. They fail because they misunderstand themselves. Earl began speaking more about awareness than ambition. He explained that most people live on the surface of their lives, reacting to events without ever questioning the beliefs driving their reactions. They assume their thoughts are facts, their fears are warnings, and their limitations are permanent. Earl knew this was an illusion. The mind, he taught, is a tool. And like any tool, it can be used correctly or incorrectly. One of his lesser-known but most profound insights was his belief that success without inner peace is not success at all. He had seen individuals achieve wealth, status, and recognition, yet remain anxious, restless, and unfulfilled. Earl believed that true success is harmony between purpose, effort, and inner calm. Without this harmony, achievement becomes a burden instead of a blessing. In his later teachings, Earl emphasized the importance of solitude and reflection. He believed that clarity does not come from constant activity, but from moments of stillness. In silence, a person can hear their true desires, not the expectations imposed by society. Earl often warned that a life spent chasing approval is a life spent running away from oneself. He also spoke about time in a way few people did. Earl believed time was not something to be managed, but something to be respected. Each day, he taught, is a container. What you place inside it determines its value. Fill it with fear and distraction, and it becomes empty. Fill it with purpose and intention, and it becomes meaningful. Most people waste time not because they are lazy, but because they are directionless. Another key idea Earl shared was the danger of comparison. He observed that people often measure their progress against others, forgetting that no two lives follow the same path. Comparison, he believed, is a form of self-betrayal. It pulls attention away from personal growth and places it on external validation. Earl taught that the only meaningful comparison is between who you are today and who you were yesterday. Despite his global influence, Earl Nightingale lived a remarkably simple life. He did not chase luxury or excess. He valued independence of thought more than public praise. Those who knew him personally often described him as calm, thoughtful, and deeply present. He listened more than he spoke, and when he spoke, it was with intention. As technology advanced and the world became louder and faster, Earl's message became even more relevant. He warned that constant noise weakens the mind's ability to think deeply. He believed that modern society was training people to consume information without understanding, to react without reflection. This, he said, was the greatest threat to human potential. Earl Nightingale often reminded his audience that discipline is not punishment, it is protection. Discipline protects your goals from distraction, your values from compromise, and your future from regret. Without discipline, even the best intentions dissolve under pressure. One of the final truths Earl shared was about identity. He believed that people do not rise to the level of their goals. They fall to the level of their self-image. If a person secretly believes they are unworthy of success, they will subconsciously sabotage opportunities. Changing results, therefore, requires changing identity. And identity, Earl taught, is shaped by repeated thoughts and actions. As his life approached its later chapters, Earl Nightingale's focus shifted from teaching success to preserving wisdom. He knew that trends fade, but principles endure. His recordings were not designed for a specific generation. They were designed for any human being willing to think. The untold history of Earl Nightingale is not just the story of a man, it is the story of an idea that challenges people to stop drifting, to stop blaming, and to start thinking deliberately. It is the story of a voice that refused to shout in a world addicted to noise. And perhaps this is the greatest secret of success Earl Nightingale ever revealed. Success is not found in chasing more. It is found in becoming more aware. Aware of your thoughts. Aware of your direction. Aware of the quiet power you carry within you every single day. Yet even now, His message is not complete without one final understanding. A truth so simple, yet so demanding, that most people will hear it, but few will live it. This final lesson ties everything together and reveals why Earl Nightingale's words continue to guide those who are ready to listen. The final understanding Earl Nightingale wanted people to grasp was not dramatic, and that is exactly why it was so powerful. He believed that truth rarely announces itself loudly. Instead, it waits quietly for those who are willing to slow down and listen. This final lesson was about responsibility, not as a burden, but as liberation. Earl taught that the moment a person accepts full responsibility for their thoughts, they reclaim control over their life. Most people misunderstand responsibility. They see it as pressure, as blame, as something heavy. Earl saw it differently. To him, responsibility meant freedom. If your life is the result of your thinking, then you are no longer at the mercy of circumstance. You become the architect, not the victim. He often explained that the mind does not distinguish between what is real and what is repeatedly imagined. This is why fear can feel so powerful, even when no immediate danger exists. But this is also why vision can be transformative. When a person holds a clear picture of their desired future and returns to it daily, the mind begins working in alignment with that image. Opportunities appear, confidence strengthens, action becomes natural. Earl Nightingale believed that most people fail not because they aim too high, but because they aim too low. They settle for what is familiar instead of exploring what is possible. This settling happens quietly. It happens when people say one day instead of now. When they trade long-term fulfillment for short-term comfort. Earl warned that comfort is the most dangerous addiction of all, because it feels safe while slowly stealing potential. Another truth Earl emphasized was the importance of self-trust. He believed that intuition is often ignored because people are trained to seek permission instead of guidance. From a young age, society teaches individuals to conform, to fit in, to follow established paths. Earl taught that progress has always been made by those who were willing to think independently, even when it felt uncomfortable. He also spoke about failure in a way that removed its power to intimidate. Failure, Earl explained, is not the opposite of success. It is part of it. Every attempt that does not succeed provides information, and information, when used correctly, becomes wisdom. The only true failure, he said, is the failure to act. In his final years, Earl Nightingale rarely spoke about money or material success. Instead, he focused on meaning. He believed that a meaningful life is one lived intentionally, where daily actions align with personal values, where work becomes an expression of purpose rather than a means of survival. Earl believed that when a person finds meaning, success follows naturally. One of his most profound observations was about legacy. Earl did not believe legacy was something left behind after death. He believed legacy is created daily through influence, through the words you speak, through the example you set, through the way you treat others. Every interaction, he taught, leaves an imprint. Earl Nightingale's calm voice, steady tone, and thoughtful pacing were not performance. They were reflection. He spoke slowly because he thought deeply. He paused because he respected the listener's intelligence. He trusted that those who were ready would understand, and those who were not would return later. This is why his message continues to resonate decades later. In a world obsessed with speed, Earl offered stillness. In a culture addicted to noise, he offered clarity. In a society chasing external validation, he pointed inward. The untold history of Earl Nightingale is ultimately the history of a man who chose to think, who refused to drift, who understood that the greatest journey is not across oceans or continents but inward, toward awareness, discipline, and purpose. The secret of success, as Earl Nightingale revealed, was never hidden. It was simply ignored. It requires no special talent, no privileged background, no perfect timing. It requires only the courage to take control of one's thoughts and the patience to stay consistent. And this is where the story quietly turns toward you. Because Earl Nightingale never spoke to crowds. He spoke to individuals, to the listener sitting alone, questioning their direction, sensing that life holds more than routine and repetition. If you understand this final lesson, truly understand it, then Earl Nightingale's work has done its job. Because success is not something you wait for. It is something you create, moment by moment, thought by thought. And that is why Earl Nightingale's voice still speaks today. Not from the past, but from within the mind of anyone willing to listen. Earl Nightingale understood something that very few teachers ever truly grasp. Information alone does not transform a human being. Understanding does. And understanding is born when a person finally sees themselves clearly, without illusion, without excuses, and without fear. This is why Earl never tried to overwhelm people with ideas. He focused on one truth at a time, allowing it to settle, to grow roots, and to change behavior from the inside. He often spoke about the difference between being busy and being effective. Society praises activity, but Earl believed activity without direction is one of the greatest forms of self-deception. Many people exhaust themselves daily, yet move no closer to their desired life. Earl taught that effort must be guided by intention. Otherwise, motion becomes meaningless. Another insight Earl quietly emphasized was patience. Not passive waiting, but intelligent patience. He believed that most people abandon their goals not because they are impossible, but because results do not arrive on their preferred timeline. Earl taught that the mind must be trained to think long-term. Seeds do not grow the moment they are planted. They grow because they are nurtured consistently, even when nothing appears to be happening. This principle applied to character as well. Earl believed character is formed invisibly, through small daily choices no one else sees. Integrity, discipline, and self-respect are built in private, long before they are recognized publicly. He warned that shortcuts may produce temporary results, but they always extract a hidden cost. Earl Nightingale also spoke deeply about fear of judgment. He observed that many people live according to imagined opinions. They fear criticism that may never come, and approval that will never satisfy. Earl taught that self-respect must come before public approval. Without it, success feels hollow, and failure feels unbearable. One of his most powerful teachings was about identity and repetition. Earl believed that whatever a person repeatedly tells themselves, they eventually accept as truth. This is why negative self-talk is so destructive. It quietly shapes identity, limits action, and lowers expectations. Earl encouraged deliberate inner dialogue, not artificial positivity, but honest, constructive thinking aligned with goals. He also warned against the danger of drifting into beliefs inherited from others. Family, culture, and society pass down assumptions about money, ability, and limitation. Earl believed that one of the most important acts of adulthood is examining these beliefs and deciding which ones deserve to remain. Without examination, a person may live an entire life based on ideas they never consciously chose. As Earl's work continued to spread globally, he remained remarkably consistent. He did not adapt his message to trends. He did not dilute truth for popularity. He trusted that principles outlive personalities. This consistency is why his teachings feel as relevant today as they did decades ago. Earl Nightingale believed deeply in the dignity of work. He taught that work, when approached with pride and purpose, becomes a form of self-expression. No task is small when performed with excellence. He believed that success often begins when a person decides to give their best, regardless of immediate reward. In his later recordings, Earl spoke about gratitude as a stabilizing force. Gratitude, he believed, does not reduce ambition, it refines it. A grateful person is not desperate. They are grounded. And from that grounded state, intelligent ambition emerges. He also spoke about simplicity. Earl believed that complexity often hides confusion. The most powerful truths are usually simple, but simplicity requires clarity, and clarity requires courage. Courage to remove distractions, courage to say no, courage to focus. Earl Nightingale's life itself became a demonstration of his teachings. He did not chase attention. He allowed influence to grow naturally. He trusted that those who were meant to hear the message would find it when they were ready. The untold history of Earl Nightingale is, at its core, a reminder that success is not reserved for a special few. It is governed by laws that apply equally to all. Laws of thought, action, discipline, and awareness. And perhaps this is the most humbling realization of all. No one is excluded from success by fate. People exclude themselves by misunderstanding how life works. Earl Nightingale spent his life quietly correcting that misunderstanding. One voice, one idea, one listener at a time. And even now, the message continues, waiting patiently for those willing to slow down, think deeply, and choose deliberately. Earl Nightingale often reminded his listeners that the journey to success is a process of self-discovery, as much as it is a pursuit of goals. Most people approach life as if it is a race to accumulate things: money, recognition, status. But Earl understood that the real race is internal. It is the race to become someone worthy of the success they desire. This requires constant observation, reflection, and adjustment of one's thoughts. One must learn to see patterns in behavior, to recognize recurring fears, and to identify self-sabotaging habits. Without this self-awareness, no strategy, no plan, and no advice can produce lasting results. He emphasized the role of environment in shaping behavior. While he never excused failure on circumstance, he knew that the people, places, and influences surrounding an individual either reinforce growth or create invisible chains. Earl urged listeners to choose associations wisely, not as a superficial social choice, but as a deliberate alignment of energy, thought, and aspiration. Surround yourself with those who elevate, he said, and watch how your thinking begins to rise naturally. Earl also spoke about the subtle power of imagination. He taught that a person's imagination is the workshop of the subconscious mind. What one repeatedly envisions becomes internalized, influencing choices and actions, even when not consciously recognized. This is why mental rehearsal, visualization, and intentional daydreaming are not frivolous. They are exercises in shaping reality. Those who neglect the imagination neglect their own creative power. Another recurring theme in his teachings was the value of persistence. Earl observed that initial attempts rarely produce extraordinary results. The difference between temporary effort and true achievement is not energy, but duration. Success favors those who can endure setbacks, remain focused, and continue working toward the chosen objective, even when results are not immediately visible. In this way, perseverance is more than persistence. It is a deliberate alignment of thought, action, and time. Earl Nightingale's voice, calm and measured, was itself a lesson. In a world addicted to urgency, he showed that influence grows not by volume or haste, but by clarity and consistency. Every word he spoke was carefully considered, every pause intentional, giving the listener the space to reflect. He demonstrated that teaching is not about impressing, but about guiding the mind gently to truths it may already sense, but has not yet acknowledged. He also confronted the fear of failure with subtle insight. Many people fear failure because it threatens identity, reputation, or comfort. Earl reframed failure as feedback, a necessary and informative step toward mastery. Without risk, he explained, there is no progress. Without confronting discomfort, there is no growth. The path of success is not free of difficulty. It is navigated through it with understanding and courage. Earl consistently emphasized that thinking shapes results more than any external factor. A person may have talent, opportunity, or resources, but if their thinking is unstructured, negative, or reactive, those advantages are wasted. Conversely, a disciplined, focused mind can overcome apparent limitations. This principle, he often reminded, applies universally. Success is not a matter of luck, circumstance, or birthright. It is a matter of conscious thought and deliberate action. He also explored the relationship between goals and happiness. Earl believed that goals are essential, but they must align with personal values. Chasing wealth without purpose, status without fulfillment, or recognition without integrity leads to emptiness. True success, he argued, is holistic. It integrates achievement with character, ambition with ethics, and productivity with joy. Perhaps one of the most profound aspects of Earl Nightingale's philosophy was his belief in continuous learning. He never claimed to have all the answers, nor did he encourage blind acceptance. He invited listeners to think, question, and observe. He encouraged personal experimentation. Success is personal, he taught, and must be discovered by each individual through observation, reflection, and adaptation. The principles remain constant, but the application is unique. Even in his later years, Earl remained humble. He did not seek fame or adulation. His goal was simple: to awaken people to the possibilities within themselves, to teach them that the mind is a creative force, capable of building a life of meaning, purpose, and fulfillment. He trusted that those who were ready would act, and those who were not would return to the message when they were prepared to hear it. Earl Nightingale's untold history is a story of quiet revolution. It is the story of a man who chose to think deeply when others were distracted, to act deliberately when others drifted, and to share insight when others remained silent. His life demonstrates that profound influence does not always come from loud action, but from consistency, clarity, and a commitment to truth. Ultimately, the secret of success he left behind is accessible to anyone willing to embrace it. It is not hidden in complicated strategies, unlikely opportunities, or shortcuts. It resides in the simple but powerful discipline of choosing thoughts, focusing attention, taking responsibility, and living with intentionality. It requires courage, patience, and self-awareness. And above all, it requires trust in the process, in oneself, and in the quiet but unstoppable power of deliberate thinking. Earl Nightingale's legacy endures not because of accolades or recognition, but because the principles he shared remain timeless. They apply today, tomorrow, and for generations yet to come. For those who listen carefully, who pause to reflect, and who act consistently, his words continue to guide the path to not just success, but to a life lived fully and purposefully. Earl Nightingale often reminded his listeners that the journey of self-mastery begins with small, consistent steps. Many people underestimate the power of seemingly minor choices, yet it is precisely these choices that compound over time to create profound results. He compared life to a garden. Neglect leads to weeds. Inattention allows clutter to take root, and small, deliberate actions, day after day, cultivate growth, beauty, and abundance. Success, he taught, is no different. It is the accumulation of consistent thoughts, decisions, and habits aligned with purpose. He also emphasized the importance of clarity in thought. A mind clouded with confusion, doubt, or indecision cannot generate meaningful action. Many people, Earl observed, drift through life because they never stop to define what they truly want. They follow routines, external expectations, and societal norms, mistaking activity for progress. Earl's guidance was clear. Stop drifting, define your destination, and align every thought, word, and action toward it. Without clarity, even effort becomes wasted energy. Another recurring lesson in his teachings was the concept of self-image. Earl believed that a person can only achieve what they believe themselves capable of achieving. The mind, he explained, accepts and fulfills the identity it has been given. If you see yourself as limited, small, or unworthy, your results will inevitably reflect those beliefs. Changing outcomes, therefore, begins with transforming self-perception. This is not wishful thinking. It is a disciplined, intentional process of rewiring thought patterns and consistently reinforcing positive self-beliefs. Earl was also deeply concerned with the impact of habitual thinking. He observed that most people live on autopilot, reacting to external circumstances and repeating patterns without awareness. Habits of thought, he said, are more powerful than habits of action because they dictate the choices we make, the behaviors we adopt, and ultimately, the lives we live. By becoming aware of these patterns and deliberately shaping them, individuals can redirect their lives toward purpose, productivity, and fulfillment. He frequently spoke about the danger of postponing responsibility. Many people assume that success, happiness, or recognition will arrive one day or someday in the future. Earl warned that this mindset is a trap. Life does not wait, and the only moment available for deliberate action is the present. By taking responsibility today, choosing thoughts, setting goals, and acting intentionally, people reclaim control of their destiny. Waiting, he reminded, is the silent thief of potential. Earl Nightingale also explored the subtle connection between thought and emotion. He understood that the mind does not distinguish between fear imagined and fear real, hope imagined and hope real. Emotions are amplified by the intensity and repetition of thought. This is why positive, focused thinking is not abstract or superficial. It is essential. It creates emotional alignment, motivates action, and shapes results at a deep, subconscious level. In his later teachings, Earl placed great emphasis on integrity. He understood that short-term success achieved without honesty, ethics, or respect is fragile and unsatisfying. Integrity, he taught, is the foundation upon which enduring success is built. It may not produce immediate reward, but it produces trust, influence, and long-term impact. He often reminded listeners that reputation, once earned through consistent integrity, becomes a powerful ally in every endeavor. Earl's philosophy, extended to the understanding of time. He believed that time is the most precious resource available to every human being, yet it is most often squandered through distraction, procrastination, and reactive living. He encouraged deliberate scheduling, prioritization, and thoughtful allocation of attention. Every day, he reminded, is an opportunity to invest in thoughts, actions, and relationships that compound into meaningful results over a lifetime. He also discussed the subtle art of focus. In a world filled with endless distractions, focus is the hidden currency of achievement. Earl explained that multitasking and fragmented attention dilute energy and reduce effectiveness. Success, he said, comes to those who concentrate deeply on the most important tasks, the highest priorities, and the objectives that align with purpose. Focus is not merely a skill, it is a discipline of thought. Perhaps one of the most enduring aspects of Earl Nightingale's untold history is his commitment to teaching that success is universal and accessible. It is not reserved for the wealthy, the talented, or the well-connected. It is governed by principles that anyone can apply with consistency, patience, and integrity. This universality is why his message transcends generations. It does not rely on trends, technologies, or external circumstances. It relies on fundamental truths about human nature and the laws of thought. Earl often concluded his recordings with a call to deliberate action. Knowledge alone is insufficient. Understanding alone is insufficient. Transformation requires consistent application. People must choose to act on what they know, to integrate principles into daily life, and to cultivate the mindset capable of sustaining success. Without this, insight remains theoretical and potential unrealized. His untold history, therefore, is more than a biography. It is a roadmap for personal transformation. It reveals that the path to success begins not with external achievements, but with the inner work of thinking deliberately, acting intentionally, and living consistently with truth. It is a journey inward, toward awareness, mastery, and purpose, before it is a journey outward, toward goals and accomplishments. Earl Nightingale's life demonstrates that profound influence is rarely loud. It is quiet, consistent, and rooted in truth. A single voice, a single idea, patiently delivered, can awaken minds, redirect lives, and inspire generations. His story is a reminder that real power lies not in circumstance, wealth, or opportunity, but in the disciplined, thoughtful, and consistent use of the mind. And so, the untold history of Earl Nightingale continues to echo through the minds of those who are ready to listen, to think, and to act. For those who embrace his principles, the secret of success is no longer a distant mystery. It becomes a living, breathing part of every thought, every decision, and every day. It is the culmination of awareness, responsibility, clarity, and perseverance, all working together to create a life of purpose, meaning, and true achievement. Earl Nightingale also spoke frequently about the extraordinary power of imagination and visualization. He believed that the mind cannot differentiate between vividly imagined experiences and real ones when they are repeated consistently. This principle, he explained, is why mental rehearsal, goal visualization, and imagining desired outcomes are essential practices for anyone seeking success. By repeatedly seeing oneself achieving goals, solving problems, and navigating challenges, the subconscious mind begins to align with that vision, creating opportunities, ideas, and actions that move toward the imagined reality. It is not wishful thinking. It is deliberate training of the mind to create consistent, tangible results. He emphasized that thoughts are seeds and that the mind is fertile soil. What we plant, we eventually harvest. Neglect allows weeds of fear, doubt, and negativity to take root. Thoughtfulness, focus, and deliberate intention cultivate strength, confidence, and achievement. Earl often warned that many people unknowingly nurture weeds in their own minds while hoping for a fruitful life. By recognizing these patterns and consciously choosing thoughts, anyone can redirect the course of their life. This simple but profound principle is what he called foundation of the secret of success. Earl Nightingale understood that discipline is the bridge between goals and achievement. He believed that discipline is not restriction, but liberation. It frees people from the chaos of impulsivity, indecision, and procrastination. Discipline structures thought and action in a way that allows consistent progress, turning intention into reality. While talent, luck, or opportunity may provide an advantage, without discipline, they rarely produce lasting results. Earl's message was clear. The individual who masters self-discipline masters life. He also spoke about the importance of maintaining a positive, yet realistic mindset. Earl distinguished between naive optimism and conscious, deliberate positivity. Positive thinking is effective only when it is grounded in reality, guided by observation and reinforced by action. Blind optimism, he warned, leads to disappointment and inaction. True success arises when hope, vision, and thought are aligned with intentional effort, allowing both the mind and the actions it drives to function effectively and consistently. Another recurring theme was the power of persistence. Earl observed that those who give up too soon often miss breakthroughs that were just around the corner. Progress is rarely instantaneous, and setbacks are not signs of defeat but feedback. By maintaining focus, effort, and belief, the persistent individual eventually discovers solutions, achieves breakthroughs, and realizes goals. Persistence, he emphasized, is the compounding force of action applied over time, the hidden multiplier behind extraordinary achievements. Earl also highlighted the subtle but crucial role of gratitude. Gratitude, he explained, is not a passive feeling, but an active choice that shapes perception, reinforces positive thinking, and stabilizes emotion. A grateful mind sees opportunities where others see obstacles, maintains focus in adversity, and strengthens resilience. By incorporating gratitude into daily life, a person cultivates an internal environment that is conducive to success, well-being, and fulfillment. He often reminded his listeners that time is the ultimate resource. While money can be earned, status can be gained, and possessions can be acquired, time, once spent, can never be recovered. Every moment invested in thought, reflection, and deliberate action compounds into the life we ultimately experience. Earl urged individuals to protect their time, prioritize their activities, and invest in mental and emotional growth, knowing that these invisible actions yield the most profound results over a lifetime. Earl Nightingale also placed emphasis on alignment between thought, values, and action. Success without congruence is unsatisfying. A person may achieve goals that bring temporary pleasure, but without alignment, they lack fulfillment, integrity, and meaning. True success, he taught, occurs when every aspect of life, mindset, behavior, and purpose moves harmoniously toward the life one consciously chooses to create. Perhaps one of the most enduring aspects of Earl Nightingale's untold history is his insistence that success is accessible to anyone willing to engage in deliberate thinking, consistent action, and continuous self-reflection. It is not reserved for the talented, the wealthy, or the well-connected. It requires only a willingness to take responsibility for one's own mind, to recognize the power of thought, and to act with clarity, focus, and discipline. Finally, Earl reminded us that the secret of success is as much about character as it is about achievement. Integrity, honesty, humility, and service are not secondary considerations. They are essential components of lasting success. Without them, achievement is fragile and often unsatisfying. With them, even modest accomplishments bring deep fulfillment and enduring influence. Earl's life, calm voice, and thoughtful guidance exemplify these principles, showing that success is not merely external. It is an inner mastery of thought, emotion, and character. Earl Nightingale's untold history is therefore more than a biography. It is a guide to personal transformation. It demonstrates that the most powerful force shaping life is the mind, that deliberate thought creates extraordinary results, and that by taking responsibility for one's thoughts and actions, anyone can achieve not only success, clarity, and fulfillment. His voice continues to resonate across time because its message is timeless. The journey to success begins within, and every individual holds the power to shape their destiny, one thought at a time. Earl Nightingale's life teaches us that success is not a sudden event, a stroke of luck, or the result of external factors. It is the cumulative result of small, deliberate, and consistent actions guided by thought. He often reminded listeners that the mind is the most powerful tool a human possesses. If one learns to control it, to direct it, and to nurture it consciously, there is no limitation to what can be achieved. Conversely, neglecting the mind, allowing it to drift into negativity, fear, or indecision, guarantees unfulfilled potential. This fundamental principle, while simple, is overlooked by most people throughout their lives. He believed that one of the biggest obstacles to success is the tendency to blame circumstances, other people, or society for one's situation. Earl taught that while external factors may influence outcomes, they do not determine them. The true determinant of life's results is the quality of thought and the decisions arising from it. To take full responsibility for one's mind is to reclaim the power to shape destiny. This is a lesson rarely emphasized in conventional education, yet it is the cornerstone of every extraordinary life. Earl Nightingale also focused on the importance of setting clear, written goals. He understood that a goal acts as a guiding star, providing direction and purpose. Without goals, effort becomes scattered, energy is wasted, and life drifts aimlessly. By defining exactly what one wants, writing it down, and reviewing it regularly, a person programs their subconscious mind to seek opportunities, solutions, and actions aligned with that vision. Earl often said that clarity of purpose is one of the most overlooked but essential ingredients for success. Another recurring theme in his work was the cultivation of resilience. Life, Earl reminded listeners, will inevitably present challenges, setbacks, and disappointments. These events are not failures unless one allows them to be. By viewing difficulties as feedback, learning opportunities, and catalysts for growth, individuals strengthen their character and expand their capacity for achievement. Persistence in the face of adversity, he explained, is one of the most defining characteristics of successful people. Earl also emphasized the importance of focus and concentration. In a world filled with distractions, scattered attention diminishes the effectiveness of effort. By concentrating on the most important tasks, maintaining clear priorities, and avoiding unnecessary diversions, a person maximizes the impact of their actions. Focus, he argued, is not just a skill, but a discipline of thought that transforms ordinary effort into extraordinary results. He believed deeply in the principle of personal integrity. Success achieved without integrity is fragile and unsatisfying. Earl explained that honesty, ethical behavior, and consistency in character build trust and influence, which are essential for long-term achievement. While shortcuts may provide temporary gain, they carry hidden costs that ultimately undermine success. By adhering to principles and cultivating a reputation of integrity, individuals create a foundation upon which all accomplishments can stand firmly. Gratitude was another key element in Earl Nightingale's philosophy. He taught that a mindset of gratitude transforms perception, strengthens resilience, and aligns emotion with thought. A grateful mind recognizes opportunities instead of obstacles, sees progress instead of setbacks, and maintains focus even in the face of difficulty. Gratitude, he explained, is both a stabilizing and motivating force that enhances every aspect of life. Earl's teachings also extended to the value of continuous learning. He observed that the world changes, challenges evolve, and opportunities shift over time. To remain effective, individuals must constantly expand their knowledge, refine their skills, and adapt their thinking. Learning is not a phase of life, but a lifelong commitment, and those who embrace it consistently develop the mental flexibility and insight required for sustained success. Perhaps one of the most profound aspects of his untold history is his insistence on deliberate action. Knowledge and understanding alone are insufficient. Transformation requires consistent application. Every idea, principle, or insight must be put into practice repeatedly until it becomes habitual. Earl Nightingale understood that action, guided by disciplined thought, is the engine that converts potential into tangible achievement. He also warned against the dangers of drifting, a theme that runs throughout his work. Most people drift through life without consciously choosing their direction, influenced by circumstances, habits, and other people's expectations. Drifting leads to wasted potential, unrealized dreams, and eventual regret. By choosing a clear purpose and aligning daily actions with it, individuals escape the trap of drift and move intentionally toward meaningful achievement. Finally, Earl Nightingale's life is a testament to the quiet power of influence. He did not seek fame or recognition for himself. Instead, he focused on sharing principles that empowered others. One voice, delivered with clarity, calmness, and consistency, can awaken minds, reshape behavior, and inspire generations. His untold history is a reminder that profound change does not require spectacle. It requires insight, integrity, and the courage to act deliberately. Through his work, Earl Nightingale revealed that the ultimate secret of success lies within each individual. It is the ability to think clearly, focus relentlessly, act consistently, and cultivate a mindset aligned with purpose, integrity, and resilience. This is not a complex formula, nor a rare gift. It is a disciplined practice, accessible to anyone willing to take responsibility for their thoughts and choices. By embracing these principles, a person transforms not only their results, but their entire life. Earl Nightingale's untold history continues to inspire because it addresses the most fundamental truths about human potential. Success is not an external acquisition. It is an internal mastery. It is cultivated quietly, daily, within the mind and character. Those who heed his message discover that life's greatest opportunities are created from thought, disciplined action, and unwavering commitment to principle. The secret is simple yet profound. Control your mind, choose your direction, act with purpose, and success follows naturally. As Earl Nightingale reflected on his own life, he often emphasized that the journey of understanding and success is never truly finished. It is a lifelong process of refinement, observation, and deliberate choice. He reminded his listeners that life will continuously present challenges, distractions, and opportunities, and the mind is the instrument through which all outcomes are shaped. Mastery over one's mind, therefore, is the ultimate form of freedom. Once a person understands this, every day becomes a conscious opportunity to act, learn, and grow. Success, he taught, is not a single event or achievement. It is the cumulative effect of a lifetime of deliberate thought, disciplined action, and consistent character. This perspective shifts the focus from chasing external markers to cultivating internal mastery. He frequently explained that most people fail not because they lack ability, education, or resources, but because they fail to think clearly, act consistently, and take full responsibility for their own lives. Drifting, reacting, and allowing external circumstances to dictate one's trajectory ensures mediocrity. Conversely, taking control of thought and behavior leads inevitably to achievement, satisfaction, and influence. Earl's insight was simple, yet radical in its implications. Nothing external can limit a person as much as their own mind can, and nothing internal can empower a person as much as disciplined, intentional thinking can. Earl also emphasized the importance of measuring progress, not against others, but against oneself. True growth is personal and relative. Comparing oneself to others often creates discouragement or arrogance, neither of which fosters improvement. Instead, he urged individuals to examine their own thoughts, habits, and choices daily, asking whether they are moving closer to their goals and ideals. This honest self-assessment, he explained, is the foundation of personal accountability, which in turn drives consistent progress. Throughout his life, Earl Nightingale remained focused on practical, actionable principles rather than abstract motivation. He knew that inspiration alone fades, but action reinforced by thought creates enduring results. He encouraged listeners to write down goals, review them daily, and align their thoughts and actions with them consistently. He taught that even small, consistent steps, repeated over time, lead to extraordinary results. A principle as true for personal development as it is for financial, professional, or creative achievement. He also addressed the subtle yet powerful influence of the subconscious mind. Earl believed that much of human behavior is driven by subconscious beliefs, many of which are inherited or absorbed unconsciously. By consciously shaping thoughts, repeating positive affirmations, and visualizing success, individuals can reprogram their subconscious, aligning it with their conscious goals. This process, he explained, is central to achieving what many consider impossible, because it allows the mind to work in harmony rather than conflict. Another cornerstone of his teaching was the importance of integrity and ethical conduct. Earl understood that shortcuts, deception, or unethical actions may provide temporary advantage, but they ultimately erode trust, self-respect, and long-term success. Real achievement, he explained, is inseparable from character. By cultivating integrity, one creates a foundation upon which all accomplishments can stand securely and sustainably. Earl Nightingale's philosophy also recognized the role of fear, not as an obstacle to be eliminated, but as a signal to be acknowledged. Fear often indicates an area where growth is possible, where the mind and character can expand. Rather than avoiding fear, he taught one should confront it deliberately, understanding its source and using it as a catalyst for action. Courage, according to Earl, is not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. In his later years, Earl reflected on the significance of gratitude, mindfulness, and perspective. He reminded listeners that life is not merely about accumulation of wealth, power, or recognition, but about living with awareness, appreciation, and intention. Gratitude, he emphasized, strengthens resilience, clarifies priorities, and enhances satisfaction. Mindfulness allows individuals to observe their thoughts and actions, fostering intentionality. Perspective ensures that challenges are viewed as opportunities for growth rather than insurmountable obstacles. Ultimately, the untold history of Earl Nightingale is a story of insight, patience, and consistency. His life demonstrates that a single committed individual, armed with disciplined thought and deliberate action, can profoundly influence countless others. His recordings, teachings, and philosophy have endured because they address fundamental truths about human nature, potential, and achievement. They are not dependent on culture, era, or circumstance. They are timeless principles of thought, responsibility, and purposeful living. And so, the secret that Earl Nightingale uncovered and shared is deceptively simple. Control your mind, focus your efforts, act with discipline, cultivate character, embrace persistence, and live with awareness. These principles are accessible to anyone willing to commit to them, and their power is transformative. By applying them, ordinary individuals can achieve extraordinary results, fulfill potential, and lead lives of purpose, influence, and true success. Earl Nightingale's untold history is not merely a biography, it is a blueprint for life itself, showing that the greatest journey is inward, and the most enduring achievement comes from mastering the mind, embracing responsibility, and aligning one's actions with truth and purpose.